My name is Tyrone Rodriguez. I'm the producer at Nicalis, working on 1001 Spikes for PlayStation 4.
Let's start by talking a little about your influences for this game going retro.
So, Nicalis as a company, we've always loved retro and 16-bit games, and I grew up on them. I love playing them. Samu Osada, the original designer of the game and our co-designer on this, he grew up playing Famicom in Japan, and he loves that era of game where it's unforgiving, but it's also beautiful in a way that it's so limiting. He's actually a fine artist, and he can draw basically whatever he wants to this level, but he finds the idea of making a pixel art game fascinating because the less resolution you have, the more limited you are as far as how much fidelity and detail you can do in animation. So it's actually a personal challenge to him to make this kind of game because it's a lot of fun to be able to make the characters animate properly, move properly, and get the kind of look that you want to get without having HD graphics.
Can you talk a little about this game and some of the characters people will be playing as?
So in 1001 Spikes, the story is you play as Aban Hawkins, and he's part of a family of archaeologists. Your dad, Jim Hawkins, has gone missing. They have sort of a violent relationship. They don't get along, but they do have one link together, which is Tina, Aban's older sister. And she sends him a letter that our father's gone missing, come and help. And that's the premise and how the game begins. But as far as gameplay goes, it's a traditional 2D platformer. With Aban, the main character, you can jump and you can attack. He also has a melee attack. But all of the other characters all have different abilities. For example, Tina can hold on to ledges. Finally, when you unlock Jim, he's got a rising uppercut that can break blocks, and he has a shotgun. And there's over a dozen characters, each with different abilities that, for a single player, make it a lot of fun to play through the levels. But when you play 1 to 4 player and you play with other friends, it's a lot of fun to see these characters with different abilities go at it.
When it comes to 4-player, can you talk a little about that gameplay experience?
Sure. So with 4-player and 2 to 4 player, we have both co-op and versus. And in co-op mode, you can play the story mode. And what you can do, you can jump in at any time and drop out at any time, pick whatever character you want, and you can help or hinder the first player. And by help or hinder, what I mean is you can, if one player collects a key and he dies and the other player is still alive, you can get to the door and you'll advance. When you get to the next stage, both players will have spawn, or all 4 players will have spawn. But there's also friendly fire, so although you can't collide with each other, I can shoot you. And so I can shoot you, you'll get stunned, and maybe spikes will come out and kill you, so you can kind of be a jerk. And then there's a dedicated versus mode. There's one that's like Mario Brothers where we have a one screen level and you're going around trying to hurt each other. There's another that's sort of like Ice Climber where you're trying to climb a tower and get to the end and beat a boss. And the last is the one we're jokingly called Lost Levels, 1001 Spikes, where it's dedicated multiplayer platforming where you go together and you're just trying to get through these levels.
What are your thoughts about the PS4 and indie games being showcased right alongside AAA blockbusters?
I think Sony knows what's going on with the industry and with how games are changing, and that indie games are the most purest form of games in the sense that because of financial limitations or choices that we make as independent developers, we make certain kinds of games. But they usually wind up being very gamey games. They're very pure in the sense that we have a purpose as far as it being a 2D platformer or being a first-person shooter or being a game about survival. And at its roots, if you go back to the PlayStation 1 and even the PlayStation 2, Sony's always been about these really great game experiences, and the third-party group at Sony really gets it. So for us, it's awesome because they've made it really easy to be on PS4.